Min Park owned Miami's underground. His word ended bloodlines. His decisions moved empires. But tonight, on this cruise ship, clutching his screaming baby, he was on his knees, begging the universe for mercy. 3 days of hell, 4 bottles rejected, every trick failed. The most dangerous man in Florida couldn't stop his own son from crying. Then she made a choice. An African-American nurse who'd lost her own baby 6 months ago. Her body still made milk for a child who'd never drink again. She looked at his suffering son, looked at his broken face, and whispered, "I lost my son. Let me save yours. Let me breastfeed him." He never trusted strangers, but his baby was suffering. So he said yes. What Min didn't know, that moment of mercy just triggered a countdown. Saving his son cost him nothing. Falling in love with her, that cost him everything. The baby's screams cut through the fancy dining hall like a knife through butter. Min pressed his son closer to his chest, bouncing David in his arms for what felt like the 100th time that hour. Sweat dripped down his neck despite the cool air conditioning. His expensive black suit felt too tight, too hot. Nothing worked. Not the bottle, not the rocking, not the soft songs he tried to remember from his own childhood in Seoul. "Can't you shut that thing up?" A bald man at the next table hissed, his face red with anger. Min jaw clenched. His dark eyes flashed with the kind of danger that made men back away in the underground world he controlled. But here, on this cruise ship full of rich tourists sailing from Miami, he was just a father who couldn't stop his baby from crying. The thought made his chest burn with shame. "I'm trying," Min said through gritted teeth, his Korean accent thick with frustration. An older woman in pearls whispered loudly to her husband, "Why would someone bring a screaming infant on a luxury cruise? How selfish!" Min stood up quickly, nearly knocking over his untouched plate of food. David's cries got even louder, his tiny face purple and wet with tears. Other diners turned to stare. Some covered their ears. Others shook their heads in disgust. He didn't blame them. He wanted to scream too. 2 days. It had been 2 days since Ji-won left the baby on his doorstep in Miami with nothing but a note that said she couldn't do this anymore. 2 days since Min world turned upside down. He'd built an empire in the shadows, commanded respect and fear from dangerous men, but he couldn't figure out why his own son wouldn't stop crying. Min walked quickly between the tables, heading for the exit. His shoulders hunched forward as if he could shield David from all the angry stares. The baby's screams echoed off the high ceiling, making everything worse. Then he saw her. She sat alone at a corner table, her dark skin glowing in the soft lighting. Her brown eyes followed him with an expression that wasn't anger or disgust. It was something else, something that made his steps slow down without meaning to. She wore a simple blue dress that hugged her curves in a way that made his breath catch despite everything falling apart around him. Their eyes met for just a second, and Min felt something electric shoot through his body. He shook his head and kept walking. This wasn't the time for whatever that was. He made it to the deck outside, the warm ocean breeze hitting his face. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. David kept crying, his little body shaking with each scream. "Please," Min whispered in Korean, his voice breaking. "Please, son, tell me what you need." But David couldn't tell him anything. He just cried and cried. "Excuse me." Min spun around, his hand automatically moving toward his waist, where he usually kept his gun, but he wasn't wearing it. Couldn't bring weapons on a cruise ship, even for men like him. It was her, the woman from the dining hall. Up close, she was even more beautiful, tall and full-figured, with natural curly hair pulled back from her face. Her lips were full and soft-looking. but it was her eyes that grabbed him, deep and warm, like they'd seen pain, but chose kindness anyway. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice smooth and gentle, "but I might be able to help." Minjun's eyebrows pulled together. How? She stepped closer and he caught her scent. Something like vanilla and flowers. It made his head spin in a way that had nothing to do with being tired. "I'm a nurse," she explained, looking down at David with such tenderness that Minjun's chest tightened. "And I recently lost my own baby. I still have milk. If you're comfortable with it, I could try feeding him. Sometimes babies just need that specific comfort." The words hit Minjun like a punch. This stranger was offering something so personal, so intimate to help his son, and she'd lost her own child. The pain in her voice was barely hidden. Minjun started, then stopped. In his world, trusting strangers got you killed. But something about her made all his usual warnings go quiet. David let out another ear-splitting scream. "Please." Minjun heard himself say, "Yes, please try." She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Is there somewhere private we could go? Your cabin, maybe?" Minjun's heart started beating faster. Bringing a strange woman to his room went against every rule he lived by. But David was suffering, and this woman's eyes held nothing but genuine care. "This way," he said. They walked through the ship's hallways in silence, except for David's crying. Minjun was aware of every inch between their bodies. Once, her hand accidentally brushed his arm, and heat spread from that spot like fire. His cabin was on the top deck, a large suite with windows overlooking the ocean. Minjun unlocked the door with shaking hands and held it open for her. She walked in, and suddenly the big room felt small. "I'm Juliet," she said, turning to face him. "Minjun." He watched as she looked around, taking in the mess of baby bottles and clothes scattered everywhere. "And this is David." "Hello, David," Juliet whispered, reaching out to gently touch the baby's wet cheek. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay." Something about her touch made David's cries quiet down to hiccups. Minjun stared in shock. "May I?" Juliet asked, holding out her arms. Minjun handed over his son, and their hands touched during the transfer. The contact lasted only a second, but electricity shot up Minjun's arm. Their eyes locked, and he saw her breath catch. She looked away first, focusing on David. "Let's sit," she said softly. They moved to the couch. Minjun sat on the opposite end, unable to look away as Juliet adjusted her dress. His mouth went dry. She was doing this to help his son, but watching her prepare to breastfeed David made something primal wake up inside him. "You don't have to watch," Juliet said, with a small smile, catching him staring. "I know it's a bit awkward." "Sorry," Minjun said quickly, turning his head toward the window, but his whole body was aware of her presence next to him. He heard the rustle of fabric. Then David's crying stopped completely. Minjun couldn't help it. He looked back. Juliet held David close to her chest, the baby finally peaceful as he fed. She gazed down at him with such love that Minjun felt his throat get tight. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "You must miss your baby," Minjun said quietly. Juliet nodded, wiping her face with her free hand. "Every day. His name was Caleb. He'd be 8 months old now." "I'm sorry." The words felt too small for her pain. "Thank you." She looked up at him, and their eyes met again. This time, neither looked away. "Where's David's mother?" Minjun's jaw clenched. "She left. Said she couldn't handle being a mother. Just disappeared 2 days ago." "That must be so hard," Juliet said. "For both of you." "I don't know what I'm doing," Minjun admitted, the truth spilling out before he could stop it. "I've never felt so helpless." "You're doing your best," Juliet said. That's what matters. He's lucky to have a father who cares this much. If only she knew what kind of man he really was, what kind of things he'd done, the blood on his hands, even if others had spilled it on his orders. But right now, in this moment, he didn't feel like a mafia boss. He felt like just a man looking at a woman who made his heart race and his body ache with a hunger he hadn't felt in years. Juliet shifted slightly, and Minjun's eyes dropped to where David was contentedly feeding. The curve of her breast, the gentle way she held his son, it was the most beautiful and sensual thing he'd ever seen. He's almost done, Juliet whispered, noticing his gaze. Her voice had dropped lower, and her cheeks darkened with a blush. The air between them changed, becoming thick and charged. Minjun leaned slightly closer, without meaning to. He could see her, pulse beating fast in her neck. David's eyes were closing now, milk-drunk and finally peaceful. Juliet carefully adjusted her dress and lifted the baby to her shoulder to burp him. Within minutes, David was fast asleep. "Where should I put him?" Juliet asked softly. "The bedroom. There's a small crib." Minjun stood and led her to the adjoining room. They placed David down together, both holding their breath until they were sure he wouldn't wake up. When they backed out of the room, they were standing close, too close. Minjun could feel Juliet's warmth, her vanilla scent filled his nose. He looked down at her lips, then back up to her eyes. They were dark and wide, full of the same wanting he felt burning in his chest. "I should go," Juliet whispered, but she didn't move. "Stay," Minjun said, his voice rough, "just for a little while. Please, I don't want to be alone." It was the truth, but not all of it. He wanted her to stay because everything in him was screaming to touch her, to taste her, to see if she felt as good as she looked. "Okay," Juliet breathed, "just for a little while." They walked back to the couch and sat down, closer than before. Minjun's hand rested on the cushion between them, and Juliet's hand landed right next to it. Their fingers were almost touching. "Thank you," Minjun said, turning to face her. "You saved us both tonight." "Anyone would have helped," Juliet said. "No, not like you did." Minjun's hand moved that last inch, his fingers covering hers. "You're special, Juliet." Her hand turned over under his, their palms pressing together. The simple touch sent fire through Minjun's whole body. "Minjun," Juliet said, and hearing his name in her voice made something in him snap. He leaned in, giving her time to pull away, but she didn't. Instead, she tilted her face up toward his, her lips parting slightly. Their mouths met softly at first, testing and careful. But when Juliet made a small sound in her throat, Minjun's control broke. He deepened the kiss, his hand moving to cup her face. Her lips were as soft as he'd imagined, and she tasted sweet. Juliet's hands gripped his shoulders, pulling him closer. The kiss turned hungry and desperate, both of them trying to fill the empty spaces inside with each other's warmth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Minjun rested his forehead against hers. "This is crazy," Juliet whispered. "I know," Minjun said, "but I can't stop wanting you." "I can't either," she admitted, her honesty making his heart pound even harder. Minjun pulled back enough to look into her eyes. "I'm not a good man, Juliet. My life is complicated and dangerous. You should run far away from me." Juliet's hand came up to touch his face, her fingers tracing his jaw. "Maybe I'm tired of being safe." Those words destroyed the last of Minjun's resistance. He kissed her again, harder this time, and Juliet kissed him back with matching fire. They stayed like that until the moon rose high over the ocean. Two broken people finding something unexpected in each other's arms, the beginning of something that would either save them or destroy them both. Minjun stood on the deck at midnight, holding David against his shoulder while the baby fussed and whimpered. The ocean stretched out dark and endless under the stars. He knew he should go back to his cabin and try the bottle again, but his feet had carried him here instead, to the place where he'd found Juliet the last 3 nights. "He's hungry again." Her voice came from the shadows, and Minjun's heart jumped in his chest. He turned to see Juliet stepping into the moonlight, wearing a soft white dress that made her skin glow. Her curly hair was loose tonight, falling past her shoulders in a way that made his fingers itch to touch it. "I think so," Minjun said, his voice coming out rougher than he meant. "I'm sorry. I know it's late." "Don't apologize." Juliet walked closer, and Minjun caught that vanilla scent that had been driving him crazy for days. "I couldn't sleep anyway." That made 4 nights in a row, 4 nights of meeting on this deck under different excuses, 4 nights of Juliet feeding David, while Minjun tried not to stare at her like a starving man looking at food, 4 nights of conversations that lasted long after David fell asleep, neither of them wanting to leave. "The nightmares again?" Minjun asked softly. Juliet nodded, her smile sad. "Yeah, same ones." She'd told him bits and pieces over the past few days, how she woke up screaming sometimes, remembering the crash, how she still heard her husband Derek's voice calling her name, how she felt her baby's absence like a missing piece of her heart. "Come," Juliet said, holding out her arms for David. "Let's sit." They'd claimed a corner of the deck as their spot, 2 deck chairs pulled close together, hidden from view by a large lifeboat, private enough that Juliet could feed David without worry, close enough that Minjun could smell her perfume and feel the heat of her body, dangerous enough that Minjun's control was slipping more each night. Juliet settled into her chair and adjusted her dress. Minjun sat down next to her, forcing himself to look at the ocean instead of watching her, but he could hear every sound, the rustle of fabric, David's contented sighs, Juliet's soft breathing. "You can look," Juliet said quietly. "I don't mind anymore." Minjun's head turned before he could stop himself. The moonlight painted everything silver and shadow. Juliet held David with one arm while her other hand gently stroked the baby's cheek. The sight made Minjun's chest tight and his body hot at the same time. "You're too good to us," Minjun said, meaning it. "We're strangers. You don't owe us anything." "You don't feel like strangers." Juliet looked up at him and their eyes locked. "Does that sound crazy?" "No." Minjun shifted in his chair, moving closer. "I feel it too." The confession hung in the air between them. The ship rocked gently on the waves, and somewhere below them, music played from one of the ballrooms. But up here, it was just the 2 of them and the sleeping baby. "Tell me something real," Juliet said, "something you've never told anyone else." Minjun's jaw clenched. There was so much he couldn't tell her, shouldn't tell her, and things that would make her grab David and run as far from him as possible. "I'm afraid," he heard himself say instead. "Every day, I'm afraid I'll fail him. That I'll be a terrible father like mine was to me." Juliet's free hand reached out and found his, their fingers lacing together naturally. "What was your father like?" "Cold. Angry. He hit my mother when he drank, which was every night." Minjun's thumb rubbed circles on Juliet's palm, the touch soothing something raw inside him. "I swore I'd never be like him. But what if it's in my blood? What if I can't escape it?" "You're nothing like that," Juliet said firmly. "I see how you look at David, how you hold him so carefully, like he's made of glass. How you haven't slept in days because you're so worried about getting everything right. That's not a bad father, Minjun. That's love." The word love in her voice made Minjun's heart skip. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles softly, keeping his eyes on hers. Your turn. Tell me something real. Juliet's breath hitched at the kiss, but she didn't pull away. I'm angry at Derek sometimes, my husband. I know that's awful because he died, but I get so angry that he left me alone, that I have to hurt like this forever, while he's just gone. That's not awful, Minjun said. That's honest. The accident was 6 months ago. Juliet's eyes filled with tears that caught the moonlight. We were driving home from the hospital with Caleb. He was only 3 days old. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit us on Derek's side. He died instantly. Caleb died 2 hours later at the hospital. I walked away with just a broken arm. Juliet! Minjun started, but she kept talking. I begged them to save my baby. I screamed until my voice was gone, but they couldn't. A tear rolled down her cheek. Why did I survive? Why did I get to live when they didn't? Minjun stood up and carefully sat on the edge of her chair, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Juliet leaned into him, and he felt her tears soaking through his shirt. Because you're strong, Minjun whispered into her hair. Because you have more life to live, more people to help, like you helped us. Juliet turned her face into his neck, and Minjun felt her warm breath against his skin. Every nerve in his body came alive. He tightened his arm around her, holding her closer. I haven't felt anything in months, Juliet said, her voice muffled. No happiness, no excitement, just empty. But then I saw you struggling with David, and something woke up inside me. And now, sitting here with you every night, I feel alive again. Minjun pulled back enough to look at her face, tears still wet on her cheeks, eyes red but beautiful, lips trembling. He'd never wanted to kiss someone so badly in his life. I feel it too, he admitted. This pull toward you. Like gravity, David had fallen asleep between them, his tiny mouth slack. Juliet carefully lifted him and placed him in the baby carrier Minjun had brought, fastening him in securely. The whole time, Minjun's eyes never left her face. When Juliet sat back, there was nothing between them anymore. We shouldn't, Juliet whispered, but she was already leaning toward him. I know, Minjun said, closing the distance. This kiss was different from the hungry one in his cabin 4 nights ago. This one was slow and deep, full of all the words they couldn't say. Minjun's hand cupped her face, his thumb wiping away her tears, while his mouth moved against hers. Juliet's hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. She tasted like salt and sweetness. Her lips were soft and willing, opening for him when he deepened the kiss. Minjun felt like he was drowning and being saved at the same time. They broke apart for air, both breathing hard. Minjun rested his forehead against hers, his hand sliding down to cup her neck. He could feel her pulse racing under his fingers. I want you, Minjun said, his voice raw with honesty. So much it scares me. I'm scared too, Juliet admitted. Her hand came up to cover his where it rested on her neck. But I don't want to stop. Minjun kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation. His other hand slid around her waist, feeling the curve of her body through the thin dress. Juliet made a small sound in her throat that shot straight through him like lightning. Her hands moved up to his hair, fingers tangling in the dark strands. The kiss turned desperate, months of loneliness and pain pouring out between them. Minjun pulled her closer, needing to feel every inch of her against him. When they finally broke apart again, both of them were shaking. Come to my cabin, Minjun said, his voice barely above a whisper. Please. Juliet looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. If I do, this becomes real. We can't take it back. I don't want to take it back. Minjun's hand moved to her face again, his thumb tracing her lower lip. I want you in every way possible, not just tonight. I want to know everything about you. Your favourite food, what makes you laugh, what you dream about. I want it all. You barely know me, Juliet said, but her eyes were soft. Then, let me learn. Minjun kissed her softly. We have 5 more days on this ship. Let me spend them with you. Juliet closed her eyes, and Minjun held his breath. When she opened them again, they were full of determination. Okay, she said, but you have to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets between us. Juliet's hand pressed against his chest, right over his racing heart. If this is real, I need to know. Who you really are. All of it. Minjun's stomach dropped. She was asking for the one thing he couldn't give her. If he told her the truth about his life, about the Korean Mafia, the violence, the blood money, she would run. And he couldn't blame her. But looking into her honest eyes, he couldn't lie either. I'll tell you, Minjun said slowly. But not here. Not tonight. Some truths need the right moment. Juliet studied his face, and Minjun wondered what she saw. Could she sense the danger lurking under his skin? Did she know that his hands, now holding her so gently, had given orders that ended lives? Will you run when I tell you? Minjun asked, unable to stop himself. I don't know, Juliet said honestly. But I deserve to know what I'm getting into. You do. Minjun kissed her forehead, breathing in her scent. Tomorrow night. I'll tell you everything tomorrow night. Promise. I promise. They stood up together, and Minjun carefully picked up the carrier with sleeping David. Juliet's hand found his free one, their fingers intertwining naturally. They walked back through the quiet ship, passing a few late-night wanderers who smiled at them like they were a real family. Minjun's chest ached at the sight they must make, a small family heading to bed after an evening stroll. If only it were that simple. At Juliet's cabin door, she turned to face him. Stay with me tonight. Minjun's heart stopped. Juliet. Just to sleep, she clarified quickly, her cheeks darkening. I don't want to be alone with my nightmares, and maybe you need someone too. She was right. Minjun hated going back to his empty cabin, where the silence pressed down on him and his thoughts turned dark. Are you sure? He asked. Juliet unlocked her door and pulled him inside. Her cabin was smaller than his, but cosy, with pictures of her late family on the nightstand. The sight of them, Juliet smiling next to a handsome black man holding a tiny baby, made Minjun's throat tight. I'll sleep on the couch, Minjun said. No. Juliet took David's carrier and placed it next to her bed, then turned to face him. Sleep with me, in the bed. I need to feel someone next to me. Minjun knew this was dangerous, knew that lying next to her in the dark would test every bit of his control. But he couldn't say no to the vulnerability in her eyes. They got ready for bed in awkward silence, Minjun borrowing a large t-shirt from Juliet that barely fit his muscular frame. When they climbed into bed together, Minjun lay stiffly on his back, afraid to move. Then Juliet curled into his side, her head on his chest and her arm around his waist. Is this okay? She whispered. Minjun wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer, her curves pressed against him, warm and soft. More than okay. They lay like that in the darkness, listening to each other breathe, and David's quiet snores from the carrier. Minjun's hand stroked Juliet's back in slow circles, feeling her relax against him. Minjun? Juliet's voice was sleepy. Yeah? Whatever you tell me tomorrow, I'll try to understand. Minjun kissed the top of her head, his heart breaking and filling at the same time. I hope so. Because I'm falling for you, Juliet. and I don't know how to stop. Juliet lifted her head and kissed him softly in the darkness. Then don't stop. Fall with me. They kissed until sleep finally claimed them both, tangled together like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Tomorrow, Minjun would tell her the truth and watch her face change from trust to fear. Tomorrow, everything might end. But tonight, he had her in his arms, and that was enough. The Boston harbour smelled like salt and fried food when they stepped off the ship. Minjun held David in one arm while his other hand found Juliet's, their fingers lacing together like it was the most natural thing in the world. I can't believe we get 2 whole days here, Juliet said, her face bright with excitement. She wore jeans and a yellow top that made her skin glow in the morning sun. Minjun smiled, though his eyes kept scanning the crowd out of habit. Old instincts died hard. Where do you want to go first? Everywhere. Juliet squeezed his hand. I want to see it all with you. They started at Faneuil Hall, walking through the crowded marketplace, while street performers juggled and played music. Juliet stopped at every stall, exclaiming over handmade jewellery and fresh flowers. Minjun bought her a silver bracelet just to see her smile. You don't have to keep buying me things, Juliet protested, but she was already putting it on. I want to. Minjun adjusted David in the baby carrier strapped to his chest. Let me spoil you a little. They ate lobster rolls sitting on a bench overlooking the water, David sleeping peacefully between them. Minjun watched Juliet more than the view, memorising the way she closed her eyes when she tasted something delicious, the way she laughed at his jokes. This feels like a dream, Juliet said softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. A good dream? Minjun asked. The best. She looked up at him. Like we're a real family. Minjun's chest tightened. He wanted that so badly it hurt. Wanted to be the man Juliet saw when she looked at him. Just a father trying his best, not a criminal with blood on his hands. Can I tell you something? Juliet played with his fingers. Last night, I didn't have any nightmares. First time in 6 months. Minjun brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You make everything better too. Being with you feels like coming home. They kissed there on the bench, soft and sweet, while tourists walked past and seagulls called overhead. When they pulled apart, Juliet's eyes were shining. Come on, Minjun said, standing and pulling her up. Let's walk the Freedom Trail. Very historical. Look at you being a tourist, Juliet teased. They spent hours walking the red brick path, taking pictures in front of old churches and historic buildings. Minjun took a selfie of the 3 of them in front of the old state house, Juliet kissing his cheek while David yawned. It was the first family photo he'd ever taken. But as the afternoon wore on, Minjun started noticing things. A black car that seemed to follow them from street to street. 2 Korean men in suits who appeared behind them at 3 different stops. His instincts screamed danger. He tried to tell himself he was being paranoid. Boston was a big city with lots of tourists. But when he spotted one of the men talking on his phone while staring directly at him, Minjun knew they'd found him. Let's go back to the ship, Minjun said suddenly, his voice tight. Juliet frowned. Already? But we haven't seen the North End yet. I wanted to get cannoli. Now. Minjun grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the harbour. His eyes scanned every face, every shadow. Minjun, you're scaring me. Juliet had to jog to keep up with his long strides. What's wrong? Just trust me, please. They made it 2 blocks before the black car pulled up beside them. 3 men got out, blocking their path. Minjun recognised the one in front, Tae Yang, an enforcer for the Park family, his biggest rivals back in Miami. Minjun Park, Tae Yang said in Korean, his smile cold. Long time no see. Minjun shifted, putting his body between the men and Juliet. His hand moved to protect David. "This isn't your territory, Tae-yang. Everything is our territory now." Tae-yang's eyes slid to Juliet, and his smile widened. "Pretty girlfriend, and is that a baby? Didn't know you had a family. Leave them alone." Minjun's voice dropped to something dark and dangerous. "This is between us." "What's going on?" Juliet asked, her hand clutching the back of Minjun's shirt. "Who are these men?" "Business associates," Minjun said through clenched teeth, never taking his eyes off Tae-yang. "Old friends catching up." "Doesn't sound friendly," Juliet whispered. Tae-yang laughed. "Smart woman." "No, not friendly at all. Your boyfriend owes us money, sweetheart. A lot of money, and we've come to collect." "I don't owe you anything," Minjun growled. "I left the business. We're done. Nobody leaves." Tae-yang stepped closer. "You think you can just walk away with everything you know, everything you took from us?" Minjun's muscles tensed, ready to fight. He could take Tae-yang easily, maybe two of them, but not three, not while protecting Juliet and David. "How much?" Juliet's voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned to stare at her. She stepped out from behind Minjun, her chin lifted despite the fear in her eyes. "How much does he owe you?" Juliet repeated. "Name your price." "Juliet, no," Minjun started. $50,000, Tae-yang said, amused. "Can you afford that, sweetheart?" Juliet paled but didn't back down. "Give me a week. I can get it." "Juliet, stop!" Minjun grabbed her arm. "You're not giving these men anything." "I'm not losing you." Juliet's eyes blazed as she looked at him. "I just found you. I'm not letting them take you away." Something in Minjun's chest cracked open. This woman, who barely knew him, was willing to pay his debts, risk her own safety, all for him. "How touching," Tae-yang said. "But we don't want money anymore. We want him." He pointed at Minjun. "Come with us quietly, and we'll leave your pretty family alone." "No deal." Minjun pulled Juliet behind him again. "You want me? Come and get me." Tae-yang nodded at his men, and they moved forward. Minjun's fist connected with the first man's jaw before anyone could blink. The man went down hard. Minjun spun, his elbow catching the second man in the throat. Years of street fighting took over, his body moving on pure instinct. But he was still wearing David, still trying to protect Juliet. It made him slower, more careful. Tae-yang pulled out a knife. "No!" Juliet screamed. Minjun dodged the blade, but not fast enough. It caught his arm, slicing through his shirt and skin. Blood bloomed red against white fabric. Juliet didn't hesitate. She grabbed a trash can lid and swung it hard at Tae-yang's head. The metal connected with a loud clang, and Tae-yang stumbled backward, dazed. "Run!" Minjun grabbed Juliet's hand and they ran. Behind them, he heard Tae-yang shouting in Korean, ordering his men to follow. Minjun pulled Juliet through alleys and side streets, his arm burning where he'd been cut. David started crying from all the movement. They burst into a busy restaurant, pushing through confused diners and out the back exit. Minjun knew these tactics, how to lose a tail, how to disappear. He'd used them dozens of times before. Finally, after 20 minutes of running, they stopped in a quiet park. Minjun bent over, breathing hard. His arm throbbed and blood dripped down to his fingers. "Oh my God, you're hurt." Juliet immediately pressed her hand against his wound. "We need to get you to a hospital." "No hospitals. They'll find us there." Minjun straightened up, checking on David. The baby was crying but unharmed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you saw that." "Those men," Juliet's voice shook. "They wanted to hurt you, to take you. Minjun, what's going on? What business were they talking about?" This was it. The moment Minjun had been dreading. He could see it in her eyes, the trust starting to crack. questions forming that he couldn't avoid anymore. "Let's go somewhere safe first," Minjun said quietly. "Then I'll tell you everything. I promise." They took a taxi to a small hotel far from the harbour, Minjun paying cash and using a fake name. The room was simple but clean. He locked the door behind them and immediately went to check all the windows. Juliet laid David on the bed and turned to face him. "Talk, now." Minjun took off his bloody shirt, revealing the cut on his bicep. It wasn't deep, but it needed cleaning. Juliet got towels from the bathroom without a word and started wiping the blood away. Her hands were gentle, but her face was hard. "I'm not a good man," Minjun started. "I told you that, but you don't know what it really means." "Then tell me." Juliet wrapped a clean towel around his arm, her eyes meeting his. "I'm part of the Korean Mafia in Miami, have been since I was 19. The words tasted bitter. I started as muscle, worked my way up. Now I run my own crew. Protection, gambling, some smuggling. Nothing that hurts regular people, but still illegal, still dangerous." Juliet's hands stilled on his arm. "Mafia, yes." Minjun couldn't look away from her face, watching her process this. "Those men work for a rival family. We've been at war for years over territory. I tried to leave when David showed up, but they won't let me go. They think I have information that could destroy them." "Do you?" "Yes." Juliet stepped back, her arms wrapping around herself. "So, everything, the ship, this trip, even coming to Boston, it was all a lie. You were running." "No." Minjun moved toward her but stopped when she flinched. The small movement hurt worse than the knife wound. "Meeting you was real. Everything I feel for you is real. I took this cruise to figure out how to leave that life, how to give David a normal future. Then you walked into our lives and changed everything. I helped your baby." Juliet's voice cracked. "I let you into my bed. I was falling for you. And you're a criminal? I know how it sounds. You lied to me." Juliet's eyes filled with angry tears. "You let me believe you were just a single dad struggling to figure things out. You let me care about you knowing those men might show up and hurt us. I never meant to put you in danger." Minjun's throat felt tight. "That's why I was going to tell you last night. But then we were so happy, and I was selfish. I wanted one more perfect day with you before you hated me." "I don't hate you," Juliet whispered. "That's the problem. I should hate you. I should grab my things and never look back. But I can't stop seeing the way you hold David, or how you made me feel alive again, or how you protected us today without hesitation." Minjun took a careful step closer. "I'm trying to leave that world. For David. And now for you too. If you'll let me." "Can you really leave? Those men said nobody gets out. I have a plan." Minjun reached out slowly and touched her face. When she didn't pull away, hope bloomed in his chest. "There's someone who can help me disappear, start over, but I need time to set it up." Juliet searched his eyes for a long moment. David cooed from the bed behind them, breaking the tension. "I must be crazy," Juliet finally said, "but I believe you. I see who you really are, Minjun. Not the Mafia boss, the man who cries when his son smiles, who kisses me like I'm precious, who would die before letting anyone hurt his family. You're my family now," Minjun said hoarsely. "If you'll have me." Juliet kissed him hard, all her fear and anger and love pouring into it. Minjun pulled her close, his hands spanning her waist. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavy. "I'm still scared," Juliet admitted. "Me too." Minjun rested his forehead against hers. "But I'm more scared of losing you." They stood like that until David started fussing for food. Juliet pulled away with a shaky laugh and went to pick up the baby. Minjun watched her settle into the chair, watched her feed his son with such care despite everything she'd just learned. When David fell asleep an hour later, they put him in a nest of pillows on the floor where they could see him. Then Minjun took Juliet's hand and led her to the bed. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "After everything today, I would understand if you need space." Juliet pulled him down beside her. "I'm sure. I need to feel close to you. Need to know this is real." They kissed slowly, taking their time. Minjun's hands traced her curves through her clothes, memorizing every dip and swell. Juliet's fingers worked the buttons of his pants, her touch making him groan. "I want you." Juliet breathed against his mouth. "All of you. No more holding back." Minjun captured her lips again as his hands found the hem of her shirt. They undressed each other between kisses, skin revealed inch by inch. When they were finally bare, Minjun pulled back to look at her. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his hands trembling as they traced her body. "So beautiful it hurts." Juliet pulled him down on top of her, their bodies pressing together. The feel of her soft curves against his hard muscles made Minjun dizzy with want. "Are you sure?" he asked one more time, even though his body was screaming to take what she offered. "I'm sure," Juliet said, her eyes locked on his. "Make love to me, Minjun. Make me yours." And he did, slowly and deeply, both of them gasping at the connection. They moved together, like they'd been made for this, for each other. Minjun kissed every inch of her he could reach, murmuring in Korean how perfect she was, how much he needed her. Juliet held him close, her legs wrapped around his waist, as pleasure built between them. When they finally fell over the edge together, Minjun buried his face in her neck and whispered the truth he couldn't hold back anymore. "I love you." Juliet's arms tightened around him. "I love you too. God help me, but I do." They stayed tangled together as their breathing slowed, both knowing that tomorrow they'd have to face reality again. But tonight, they had each other, and that was everything. The text message came at 3 a.m. "We know about the nurse. Pretty thing. Be a shame if something happened to her." Minjun stared at his phone screen, his blood turning to ice. Below the text was a photo. Juliet walking on the ship's deck yesterday, smiling down at David in her arms. Someone had been watching them, following them. His hands shook as he deleted the message. Then 3 more. That followed, each one worse than the last. Detailed descriptions of what they'd do to Juliet, to David, all because of him. Minjun looked over at Juliet, sleeping peacefully in his bed, her curly hair spread across his pillow. They'd returned to the ship yesterday after Boston, and she hadn't left his cabin since. They'd made love twice more, talked until dawn, planned a future together. And now he had to destroy it all to save her. By the time Juliet woke up, Minjun had made his decision. He was dressed and standing by the window, his face carefully blank. "Good morning," Juliet said sleepily, stretching. The sheet slipped down, revealing her bare shoulders, and Minjun had to look away. "Come back to bed." "You should go," Minjun said, his voice flat. Juliet sat up, pulling the sheet around her. "What? Go back to your cabin." Minjun forced himself to look at her with cold eyes. "This was a mistake." "A mistake?" Juliet's voice rose. "Minjun, what are you talking about? Last night you said you loved me." "I lied." The words tasted like poison. "I got caught up in the moment. You were convenient, and I needed someone. But this isn't real." Juliet flinched like he'd slapped her. "I don't believe you. Believe what you want." Minjun turned back to the window, unable to watch her face break. "We dock in Philadelphia in a few hours. When we do, I think it's best if we don't see each other anymore." "You're lying." Juliet was off the bed now, wrapping the sheet around herself as she walked toward him. Something happened. What aren't you telling me? Nothing happened. Minjun's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I just realised I don't want this. You're too clingy, too needy. I have enough responsibility with David. Stop it. Juliet grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. Look at me and say that. Minjun met her eyes, and what he saw there almost broke him. Trust, love, confusion. He wanted to pull her into his arms and confess everything, but the image of those threatening texts burned in his mind. I don't want you, Minjun said slowly, clearly. Go. Tears filled Juliet's eyes, but she lifted her chin. Fine, if that's what you want. She gathered her clothes quickly and dressed with shaking hands. Minjun stood frozen, watching her prepare to walk out of his life. Every instinct screamed at him to stop her, but he clenched his fists and stayed silent. At the door, Juliet turned back. I know you're lying. I can see it in your eyes. But I won't force you to tell me why. Her voice cracked. When you're ready to be honest, you know where to find me. Then she was gone. Minjun waited until he heard her cabin door close down the hall before he let himself move. He punched the wall hard enough to split his knuckles, then slid it down to the floor. David started crying from his crib, and Minjun pulled himself together long enough to feed and change his son. But inside, he was dying. The ship docked in Philadelphia at noon. Minjun stayed in his cabin, ignoring the announcement about shore excursions. His phone kept buzzing with new messages from Taeyang. Good boy, keep her away and maybe we'll let her live. 2 more days until New York. We'll be waiting. Your son has his mother's eyes. Would be sad if he never got to use them. Each message made Minjun's rage grow hotter. He wanted to find these men and tear them apart with his bare hands. But that would only make things worse, only put Juliet and David in more danger. Around 6 that evening, someone knocked on his door. Minjun's hand went to the knife he kept hidden in his jacket before he checked the peephole. Juliet. She stood there in a red dress that hugged every curve, her arms crossed and her expression determined. Minjun's heart lurched. He shouldn't open the door. Should let her think he meant what he said this morning. But his traitorous hand was already turning the lock. I told you, Minjun started. Juliet pushed past him into the cabin. I don't care what you told me. I've spent all day thinking, and I know you're lying. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me the truth right now, or I'm going to make your life miserable for the rest of this cruise. Juliet, no. She pointed at him, her finger jabbing the air. You don't get to push me away like I mean nothing. Not after everything we've shared. Not after you looked into my eyes while we made love and told me you wanted forever. Minjun's careful control started cracking. You need to leave. It's not safe. Why? Juliet stepped closer. What happened between last night and this morning? What scared you? Nothing scared me. Liar. Juliet's hand pressed against his chest, right over his racing heart. I can feel your heart pounding. You're terrified. Of what? Those men from Boston? Minjun grabbed her wrist, but gently. Yes. They sent messages. They know about you. They're threatening to hurt you and David if I don't do what they want. Juliet's eyes widened. So you thought pushing me away would protect me? It will. If they think you mean nothing to me, they'll leave you alone. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Juliet's free hand came up to cup his face. We're way past pretending, Minjun. They've already seen us together. They already know I care about you. Then you need to get off this ship. Minjun's voice broke. When we dock in New York, you need to disappear. Change your name, move somewhere far away. I can't let them hurt you because of me. What about you? Juliet's thumb stroked his cheek. What happens to you and David? I'll figure something out. Min-jun closed his eyes, leaning into her touch despite himself. I always do. No. Juliet's voice was firm. We figure it out together. That's what people who love each other do. Min-jun's eyes snapped open. You still love me? After this morning? I never stopped. Juliet pulled his face down to hers. It would take a lot more than some harsh words to make me stop loving you, Min-jun Park. Min-jun broke. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her neck. His shoulders shook as months of fear and loneliness poured out. Juliet held him tight, her hands rubbing soothing circles on his back. I'm sorry, Min-jun whispered against her skin. I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you. I know. Juliet kissed his temple. But I don't need protecting from the truth. I need you to trust me enough to let me make my own choices. Min-jun pulled back to look at her face. And what do you choose? You. Juliet said it without hesitation. I choose you and David. Whatever comes with that, we'll face it together. It could get you killed. Living without you would kill me anyway. Juliet's hands framed his face. I've already lost one family. I'm not losing another without a fight. Min-jun kissed her desperately, pouring everything he couldn't say into it. Juliet kissed him back with equal intensity, her body pressing against his. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Show me the messages, Juliet said. Min-jun hesitated, then pulled out his phone. He watched Juliet's face as she read through the threats. She went pale, but her jaw set with determination. Okay, she said finally. What's the plan? I don't have one yet. Min-jun took his phone back. I've been trying to contact someone who can help us disappear, but he hasn't responded. Then we make our own plan. Juliet started pacing. You said you have information these men want. What if you give it to them? They'll kill me the second they have it. What if you give it to someone else first, someone who could use it against them? Juliet stopped pacing. Like the police? Min-jun shook his head. I can't go to the police. I've done things, terrible things. I'd end up in prison. What about the FBI? Juliet pulled out her phone. I have a friend from nursing school. Her brother works for the FBI in Chicago. Maybe he could help. Juliet, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Juliet was already typing. If you testify against these men, give them everything you know. Maybe they'll give you protection. Witness protection for all of us. Min-jun stared at her. You'd do that? Give up your whole life? Your name, your job, everything? What life? Juliet looked up at him. My family is gone. I have no one in Chicago anymore. Starting over somewhere new with you and David sounds like exactly what I need. Hope bloomed in Min-jun's chest for the first time in days. It won't be easy. We'd have to hide for months, maybe years, always looking over our shoulders. I've been looking over my shoulder at ghosts for 6 months. Juliet came to him and took his hands. I'd rather look forward to a future with you. Min-jun pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight he probably hurt her, but she didn't complain, just held him back. I don't deserve you, Min-jun whispered. Probably not, Juliet laughed softly. But you're stuck with me anyway. They stood like that until David started fussing. Juliet went to pick him up, cooing softly. Min-jun watched her with his son, and something in his chest settled. This was his family. This was worth fighting for. He's hungry, Juliet said, settling into the chair. Min-jun sat on the edge of the bed across from her, watching as she fed David. The domestic scene made his throat tight. When we get to New York, Min-jun said slowly, we'll go straight to the FBI. I'll tell them everything. And then we start over. New names, new city, new life. Together, Juliet added. Together, Minjun agreed. After David fell asleep, they moved him to his crib. Then Juliet took Minjun's hand and led him to the bed. "Make love to me," she said softly. "Not because we're scared or desperate, because we're choosing each other." Minjun undressed her slowly, reverently, like she was something precious, because she was. His hands traced every curve, every line of her body. Juliet's fingers mapped his scars, the evidence of his violent past, and kissed each one. When they finally came together, it was slow and deep. Minjun looked into Juliet's eyes the whole time, letting her see everything he felt: love, gratitude, fear, hope, all of it. "I love you," he said as they moved together. "I'll love you forever." "Forever," Juliet agreed, pulling him closer. "Promise me forever." "I promise." Minjun kissed her deeply. "Nothing will take me from you. I swear it." They made love until the stars came out, learning each other's bodies in new ways. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss was a vow. When they finally lay tangled together, sweaty and satisfied, Minjun felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. "What are you thinking?" Juliet asked, tracing patterns on his chest. "That I'd give up everything for this." Minjun kissed her forehead. "The money, the power, all of it. As long as I have you and David, nothing else matters. You already have us." Juliet lifted her head to look at him. "We're yours, Minjun, completely." Minjun's phone buzzed with another message, but this time he didn't look at it. Let them threaten all they wanted. He had something worth protecting now, and he'd burn down the whole world before he let anyone hurt his family. "One more day," Minjun said. "Then we dock in New York and everything changes." "Good," Juliet said, snuggling closer. "I'm ready for our forever to start." They fell asleep, wrapped around each other, David sleeping peacefully nearby. Outside, the ship sailed through the dark water toward New York, toward their future, toward whatever came next. But tonight, they had each other, and that was enough. The New York City skyline appeared through the morning fog like a promise and a threat at the same time. Minjun stood on the deck with David in his arms, watching the buildings grow larger as the ship approached the harbour. His phone had been silent all night, which worried him more than the threats. Silence meant they were planning something big. Beautiful, isn't it? Juliet wrapped her arms around him from behind, her cheek pressed against his back. Minjun leaned into her touch, trying to memorize this peaceful moment before everything fell apart. "We dock in 3 hours," Minjun said quietly. "Juliet's friend from the FBI is meeting us at the terminal. We go straight to him. Don't stop for anything." "I know." Juliet squeezed him tighter. "We've been over the plan 10 times. I just need you to be safe." Minjun turned in her arms, looking down at her face. "Promise me, if anything happens, you'll take David and run. Don't look back." "Nothing's going to happen." "Promise me." Minjun's voice was harsh with fear. Juliet's eyes softened. "I promise, but only if you promise to come back to us. Always." Minjun kissed her forehead. "Let's go inside. Get some breakfast before—" He didn't finish the sentence. 3 Korean men had just walked onto the deck from the opposite entrance, and Minjun recognized all of them. Tae-yang's best fighters. "Take David," Minjun said urgently, pushing the baby into Juliet's arms. "Go to the cabin, lock the door, don't open it for anyone but me." "Minjun, go! Now!" Juliet looked at the approaching men, her eyes widening with fear, but she turned and ran, clutching David tightly. Minjun watched until she disappeared through the door, then turned to face his enemies. "Bold move, showing up on a ship full of witnesses," Minjun said in Korean, his body already tensing for a fight. "We're tourists enjoying the view. Taeyang stepped out from behind his men, smiling that cold smile. Just like you, except your vacation ends today. There are cameras everywhere, security guards. You can't touch me here. Can't we? Taeyang pulled out his phone and showed Minjun a photo. It was Juliet's cabin door, taken this morning. We know where she sleeps. We know she feeds your bastard son. One word from me, and my men downstairs will break down that door and take everything you love. Minjun's vision went red. You touch them and I'll kill you. I'll kill everyone in your entire organization. Big words from a man with no power. Taeyang put his phone away. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to come with us quietly when we dock. You're going to tell us where you hid the evidence against the Park family, and then you're going to disappear forever. And if I don't, then your son disappears instead. Taeyang's smile widened. Babies are so fragile, so easy to hurt. Something in Minjun snapped. He moved faster than thought, his fist connecting with Taeyang's nose. Blood sprayed. The other men rushed forward, but Minjun was already moving. He fought like a demon possessed, using every dirty trick he'd learned in 20 years of violence. A kick to the knee dropped one man, an elbow to the throat took down another. But there were 3 of them, and they were trained fighters too. A punch caught Minjun's ribs, knocking the air from his lungs. Another hit his jaw, making stars explode in his vision. He tasted blood. Stop! Security! A ship's security guard ran towards them, radio in hand. Behind him, more guards appeared. Taeyang cursed in Korean and backed away. This isn't over, he hissed at Minjun. We'll get what we want one way or another. The guards grabbed all 4 of them, pulling them apart. Minjun didn't resist, letting them hold his arms while he tried to catch his breath. His ribs screamed and his face throbbed, but he was alive. What's going on here? The head security officer, a large white man with a thick moustache, looked between them. Who started this? He attacked us, Taeyang said quickly, holding his bleeding nose. Unprovoked. We were just standing here. Liar! Minjun spat blood on the deck. These men are criminals. They threatened my family. That's a serious accusation, the officer said. Do you have proof? Minjun pulled out his phone with shaking hands and showed the officer the threatening messages. The officer's expression darkened as he read them. Take all 4 to the brig, he ordered his men, and someone call the police. We'll sort this out when we dock. No! Minjun struggled against the guards holding him. My son is on this ship. My girlfriend. They're not safe while these men are here. Where are they now? The officer asked. My cabin. Deck 7, room 7112. The officer spoke into his radio. Send 2 guards to deck 7, room 7112. Stay posted at the door until we dock. No one goes in or out except the occupants. Minjun relaxed slightly. At least Juliet and David would have protection, but as the guards led him and Taeyang's men away, he caught the look in Taeyang's eyes. This wasn't over. They put Minjun in a small room separated from Taeyang and his men. The security officer stayed to ask questions while a medical staff checked his injuries, cracked ribs, split lip, bruised jaw, and nothing serious, but everything hurt. Tell me everything, the officer said, pulling out a notepad. Minjun did. He explained about the Korean Mafia, the threats, the attack in Boston. He left nothing out except the extent of his own involvement. Let them think he was just a victim. Why didn't you report this earlier? The officer asked. Because I was trying to handle it myself. Minjun winced as the medic wrapped his ribs. I didn't want to involve anyone else, but they won't stop. They'll keep coming after my family. The police will be waiting when we dock. They'll arrest these men and that won't be enough. Minjun grabbed the officer's arm. You don't understand how these organisations work. Arresting 3 men does nothing. There are dozens more who'll come after us. I need federal protection. The FBI. The officer frowned. That's above my pay grade, but I can make some calls. Please. Minjun hated begging, but he'd do anything for Juliet and David. My son is 6 months old. He doesn't deserve this life. Neither does my girlfriend. They need protection. The officer studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll see what I can do. 2 hours later, Minjun was finally allowed to leave the brig. Guards escorted him to his cabin, where more guards stood outside the door. Minjun knocked urgently. Juliet, it's me. Open up. The lock clicked, and the door flew open. Juliet threw herself into his arms, nearly knocking him over. David was strapped to her chest in the baby carrier, sleeping peacefully despite everything. Oh my God, your face! Juliet touched his swollen jaw gently. Come inside. Let me look at you properly. The guards stayed outside as Minjun entered and locked the door behind him. Juliet immediately started examining his injuries, her hands careful but thorough. I'm okay, Minjun assured her. They look worse than they are. What happened? Juliet's eyes were red from crying. I heard the guards talking about a fight, about arrests. Minjun explained everything while Juliet cleaned the cut on his lip. When he finished, she was shaking. This has to end, Juliet said. We can't keep living like this, waiting for the next attack. I know. Minjun pulled her close, careful of David between them. The security officer is contacting the FBI. When we dock, they'll be waiting. I'm going to tell them everything. Make a deal for protection. What if they arrest you instead? Then you take David and go with your friend. He'll keep you safe until... No. Juliet pulled back to look at him. We stay together, no matter what. That's the deal. Minjun's chest tightened with love for this stubborn, brave woman. Okay, together. They spent the next hour holding each other while the ship made its final approach to New York Harbor. The Statue of Liberty appeared in the window, standing tall and proud. Minjun stared at it, thinking about freedom, about new beginnings. Juliet, he said suddenly, there's something I need to do. He went to his suitcase and pulled out a small box he'd bought in Philadelphia while she was sleeping. Inside was a simple silver ring with a single small diamond. Nothing fancy, but it was all he could afford without accessing his criminal accounts. Minjun got down on one knee in front of Juliet, who gasped and covered her mouth with her hand. I know this is crazy, Minjun started, his voice shaking. We've only known each other for 6 days. 6 days that changed my entire life. You saved my son. You saved me. You looked at all the darkness in me and chose to stay anyway. Tears were already streaming down Juliet's face. I don't know what's going to happen when we dock, Minjun continued, but I know one thing for absolute certain. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, however long that is, wherever we end up. I want you by my side. Juliet Williams, will you marry me? Yes, Juliet sobbed, dropping to her knees in front of him. Yes, yes, yes. Minjun slipped the ring on her finger with trembling hands, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like salt and promises. David woke up and started crying between them, and they both laughed through their tears. We're getting married, Juliet told the baby, bouncing him gently. Your daddy and I are getting married. David grabbed her finger, the one with the ring, and tried to put it in his mouth. They both laughed harder. I love you, Minjun said, cupping Juliet's face. I love you so much, it terrifies me. I love you too. Juliet kissed him again. Forever, remember, forever. They put David down for a nap, then turned to each other with desperate hunger. This might be their last moment of peace before everything changed. They needed to feel connected, needed to seal their promises with more than words. Minjun undressed Juliet slowly, kissing every inch of skin he revealed. She did the same to him, careful of his injuries. When they were both bare, they fell into bed together. "Make love to your fiancé," Juliet whispered, pulling him on top of her. Minjun did, slowly and deeply. Their eyes locked the entire time. Every thrust was a vow. Every kiss was a promise. They moved together like they'd been doing this for years instead of days, their bodies knowing exactly what the other needed. "I'm yours," Juliet gasped as pleasure built inside her. "Only yours. Mine," Minjun agreed, his voice rough. "And I'm yours forever." They climaxed together, clinging to each other like drowning people. Afterwards, they lay tangled in the sheets, hearts racing and skin slick with sweat. "No matter what happens," Juliet said, tracing the scars on Minjun's chest, "we face it together." "Together," Minjun agreed. An hour later, the ship's horn sounded. They were docking. Minjun and Juliet dressed quickly. Minjun in jeans and a black shirt, Juliet in comfortable clothes suitable for running if needed. They gathered their important documents and Minjun's evidence files, leaving everything else behind. The guards escorted them off the ship with the first group. At the terminal, police were already waiting. So were men in FBI jackets. One of them stepped forward, a tall black man in his 40s with kind eyes. "Juliet Williams?" "Yes," Juliet said. "You must be Marcus. Thank you for coming." "My sister said it was urgent." Marcus, FBI agent Marcus Thompson, looked at Minjun. "You must be Minjun Park, the one with information about the Park family organization." "I am." Minjun shifted David in his arms. "I'll tell you everything. But first, I need you to promise my family will be protected. That depends on what you have and whether you're willing to testify." Marcus gestured to a black SUV. "Let's talk somewhere more private." They climbed into the vehicle, police surrounding them for protection. As they pulled away from the terminal, Minjun looked back at the cruise ship one last time. 6 days ago, he'd boarded that ship as a lost man with a crying baby and no hope. Now he was leaving it with a fiancé, a plan, and something he'd never had before, a real chance at a future. "It's going to be okay," Juliet whispered, taking his hand. The ring on her finger caught the morning light. Minjun squeezed her hand back. "As long as I have you, everything's okay." In the FBI office downtown, Minjun laid out everything: names, locations, financial records, evidence of murders and trafficking and corruption. He gave them enough to bring down the entire Park organization and half the Korean Mafia in Florida. "This is good," Marcus said after 3 hours of questioning. "Really good. With this and your testimony, we can put dozens of people away for life." "And in exchange," Minjun asked, "witness protection for all 3 of you, new names, new city, new lives, full protection until the trials are over and we're certain there's no more threat." Minjun looked at Juliet, who nodded. They'd already discussed this, already made their choice. "We'll do it," Minjun said. "When do we leave?" "Tonight." Marcus stood up. "Pack light. You can't take anything that could be traced. We'll provide everything you need." As they left the FBI building under heavy guard, the sun was setting over New York City. Their old lives were ending. But as Minjun looked at Juliet, his fiancée, his future wife, his salvation, he knew their new lives would be better. "Ready?" he asked her. Juliet smiled and kissed him softly. "With you, I'm ready for anything." Together, holding David between them, they climbed into the waiting car that would take them to their forever. Rain drummed against the windows of their small house in a quiet Seattle neighborhood, the sound peaceful and steady. Minjun, now known as Daniel Kim, stood in the kitchen making breakfast while soft music played from the radio. He still wasn't used to mornings like this. Calm, normal, safe. "Mama, Mama!" David toddled into the kitchen, his chubby legs moving fast. At 1 year old, he was walking everywhere now, getting into everything, and absolutely fearless. Juliet, now Claire Kim, appeared in the doorway, her hand resting on the gentle swell of her pregnant belly. She was 4 months along, glowing with happiness, despite the morning sickness that still bothered her some days. "Good morning, my loves," she said, bending to scoop up David. The toddler immediately grabbed her face and planted a wet kiss on her cheek. Minjun's heart squeezed watching them. 6 months ago, he never could have imagined this life, this peace, this joy. "Pancakes are almost ready," Minjun said, flipping the last one. "Blueberry, just how you like them." "You're spoiling me." Juliet came up behind him and wrapped her free arm around his waist, resting her head against his back. "I could get used to this. That's the plan." Minjun turned off the stove and turned in her arms, kissing her softly. "Forever. Remember, forever." Juliet agreed, her eyes sparkling. They ate breakfast together at their small dining table, David making a mess with his cut-up pancakes while chattering in his own toddler language. Sun broke through the clouds outside, casting golden light across their cozy home. This was what happiness looked like, Minjun thought. Not the expensive suits or the power or the respect he'd commanded in his old life, just his family, safe and together, eating breakfast on a rainy Saturday morning. "I have to go to work for a few hours," Juliet said, wiping syrup off David's face. "Emergency shift at the hospital. They're short-staffed." Minjun frowned. "I thought you had the weekend off." "I did, but they called this morning. It's good money, and we're still saving for the new baby's room." Juliet stood and started clearing plates. "I'll be home by dinner." "I'll take David to the park," Minjun said. "Tire him out so he naps this afternoon." An hour later, Minjun pushed David on the swings at the neighbourhood park, the toddler squealing with delight. Other parents and children played around them, everyone friendly and normal. No one here knew who Minjun used to be, what he'd done. They just saw a father playing with his son. "Higher, Dada, higher!" Minjun pushed harder, laughing at David's excitement. These moments were precious. Every single one of them. "Excuse me." Minjun's hand instinctively went to his waist, where he used to keep a weapon. But there was nothing there. He forced himself to relax as he turned to see a young white woman with a friendly smile. "Sorry to bother you," she said, "but I just wanted to say your son is adorable. How old?" 1 year. Minjun said, his Korean accent still thick despite months of English practice. Very energetic. "I can see that." The woman laughed. "Well, enjoy your day." She walked away, and Minjun's heart slowly stopped racing. Just a friendly stranger, not a threat. He had to stop seeing danger everywhere. But old habits died hard. That night, after David was asleep and Juliet had returned home tired but smiling, they curled up together on their worn couch. Minjun's hand rested on Juliet's belly, feeling the small bump that held their second child. "Do you ever regret it?" Minjun asked quietly. "Giving up everything to be with me?" Juliet looked up at him, her brown eyes soft in the lamplight. "Never. Not even once. Do you? Leaving the Mafia? No." Minjun pulled her closer. "That life was killing me slowly, but sometimes I worry I dragged you into a nightmare. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose you." Juliet's hand covered his on her belly. "I choose you every day. This life we're building, it's not perfect, but it's ours. That's all that matters." Minjun kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and gratitude into it. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavy. "Come to bed," Juliet whispered. "Make love to your wife." They moved to the bedroom quietly, careful not to wake David in the next room. Minjun undressed Juliet slowly, his hands reverent on her changing body, the curve of her belly, the fullness of her breasts. She was more beautiful now than ever. "You're staring," Juliet said with a shy smile. "Can't help it." Minjun traced the swell of her stomach. "You're carrying our baby, our daughter." They'd found out last week. A girl. Minjun had cried when the doctor told them, thinking about how this little girl would grow up safe and loved, never knowing the violence that had defined his past. "She's going to be beautiful like her mama," Minjun said, leaning down to kiss Juliet's belly. "And stubborn like her daddy," Juliet laughed, pulling him up for a kiss. They made love slowly and carefully, mindful of the baby between them. Every touch was tender, every kiss was sweet. This wasn't the desperate passion of their early days on the ship. This was deeper, richer. This was the kind of love that lasted. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the dark, Minjun's hand still resting protectively on Juliet's belly. "Do you still have nightmares?" Juliet asked softly. Minjun was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes, less often now. When I do, I wake up and look at you, and I remember I'm not that person anymore." "You were never just that person," Juliet said firmly. "Even when you were in the Mafia, you were still you, still capable of love and kindness. You just needed someone to show you." "You saved me," Minjun whispered. "That first night on the ship when you offered to help David, you saved both of us. You saved me too." Juliet turned in his arms to face him. "I was drowning in grief, going through life like a ghost. Then I saw you struggling with your baby, and something inside me woke up. You gave me a reason to live again." They kissed in the darkness, hearts beating together. The next day was Sunday, exactly 6 months since the day they'd met on that cruise ship. Minjun had been planning this for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. "Get dressed nice," he told Juliet after breakfast. "We're going out." "Where?" Juliet asked, curious. "It's a surprise." He'd arranged for their neighbour, a sweet elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, to watch David for the afternoon. Then Minjun drove Juliet to the Seattle waterfront, where boats bobbed in the harbour and the smell of the ocean filled the air. "Why are we here?" Juliet asked as they walked hand in hand along the pier. "Because 6 months ago today, a beautiful woman saved my life on a ship," Minjun said. "I wanted to celebrate here, by the water, where it all started." Juliet's eyes filled with tears. "You remembered." "I remember everything." Minjun stopped at a quiet spot overlooking the water. "I remember the exact moment I first saw you, how you looked in that blue dress, how your eyes were kind when everyone else was judging me, how you offered to help without expecting anything in return." "Minjun!" "Let me finish." He took both her hands. "These past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. Yes, we're in hiding. Yes, we have to look over our shoulders sometimes. Yes, we gave up everything we knew, but I would do it all again in a heartbeat, because it led me to you." Tears streamed down Juliet's face now. "I love you so much." "I love you too." Minjun pulled her close, one hand on her belly. "You, David, and this little girl, you're my whole world, my forever." They kissed as the sun set over the water, painting the sky orange and pink, just like that first night on the ship's deck. Some endings were really beginnings in disguise. That night, they made love with the curtains open, moonlight streaming across their bed. Minjun worshipped every inch of Juliet's body, showing her with touches and kisses what words couldn't express, how grateful he was, how completely she owned his heart. I want you forever, Minjun whispered against her skin. Every day, every night, forever. You have me. Juliet gasped as pleasure built inside her. All of me, always. They moved together like waves, building higher and higher until they crashed together, crying out each other's names. Afterwards, wrapped in sheets in each other's arms, they talked about their future. When the baby comes, Juliet said, we should buy a bigger house, one with a yard where the kids can play. And a dog, Minjun added. David keeps asking for a dog. And maybe another baby after this one. Juliet smiled up at him. Make it an even 4. Minjun's heart swelled. You want more kids with me? As many as you'll give me. Juliet kissed him softly. I want a big, noisy, happy family. The kind we both deserved, but never had growing up. Then that's what we'll build. Minjun rested his forehead against hers. Together. A few weeks later, Minjun woke up screaming from a nightmare. In his dream, Taeyang had found them, had hurt Juliet and the kids. Blood everywhere. Screaming. Loss. Hey, it's okay. Juliet was already holding him, her voice soft and soothing. You're safe. We're safe. It was just a dream. Minjun's whole body shook, sweat soaking through his shirt. It felt so real. I thought I'd lost you. You didn't lose me. You'll never lose me. Juliet cupped his face, making him look at her. We're in Seattle, in our home. David is sleeping in the next room. Our daughter is growing inside me. We're safe, Minjun. The FBI promised we're safe. Minjun pulled her close, burying his face in her neck and breathing in her vanilla scent. Slowly, his heart rate returned to normal. The fear faded. Reality came back. I'm sorry, he whispered. Don't apologize. Juliet stroked his hair. You've been through trauma. It takes time to heal. But we have time now. All the time in the world. They lay back down together, Juliet's head on Minjun's chest so he could hear his heartbeat. Strong and steady. Alive. Tell me about the future, Minjun said. The one we're building. And Juliet did, painting pictures with words of birthday parties and school plays and family vacations, of growing old together, watching their children have children of their own, of a life filled with love and laughter and peace. By the time she finished, Minjun was smiling in the darkness. That sounds perfect, he said. It will be. Juliet kissed over his heart, because we'll build it together. 6 months had passed since that fateful cruise ship where a crying baby brought 2 broken people together. 6 months of learning to trust, to love, to live without fear. 6 months of building something beautiful from the ashes of their old lives. It wasn't always easy. Some days, Minjun still jumped at loud noises or checked the locks 3 times before bed. Some days, Juliet cried for the family she'd lost, for the life that could have been, but they had each other. And that made everything bearable. Their forever had finally begun, and it was more than either of them had ever dreamed possible. Thank you so much for reading Minjun and Juliet's love story. If their journey from strangers on a cruise ship to a family finding redemption and love touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel so you never miss another emotional romance story. Hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when we post new content. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling us, where are you watching from? What was your favourite moment in this story? Do you believe in second chances at love like Minjun and Juliet found? Would you like to see more stories about unexpected romance and redemption? Don't forget to like this video and share it with anyone who loves deep, emotional romance stories about finding love in the most unexpected places. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more stories like this one. Drop a love emoji in the comments if you're rooting for Minjun and Juliet's happily ever after. See you in the next story, where love conquers all.